Now let's explain the Matzah Ashirah thing. Chazal realized that if you only don't have any water in the mix, it doesn't leaven like regular, no pun intended. And then you have fruit juice that could be diluted. Chazal realized, hey, you dilute the fruit juice, chametzing does happen. What's the natural explanation for such a thing? Very simple. The regular fruit juice, let's say pure fruit juice, what fruit juice did Chazal have? Grape juice or wine. Freshly. Whatever they squeeze. Or the Rambam says the replacements for wine, like we discussed last year, pomegranate juice and apple juice, right? Or fermented thereof. So those have a certain acidity to them. What's the acidity of apple juice or wine? It's about pH of 4, I think. Orange juice is slightly more, like 3. Okay? So esrog juice, Chazal would juice esrogs. It's like lemon juice. It's very acidic. However, once you start diluting your juice, you raise the pH. Water has a pH of 7, right? So milk is also slightly acidic, by the way. It has lactic acid. And as it ferments, it gets more acidic. Milk is a low hot.
It's very slightly basic.
Yeah, no, it's not basic. Milk is not basic. It's like a pH of 6. Yeah. So here's what Chazal found. Now you guys are fact checking me. Okay. Look at it. It's 6 point something, I think.
Rabbi, should we just accept Das Torah?
No. I don't have Das Torah. Anyways, here's how it goes. Ready? You dilute. Well, is that right?
Very, very slightly
Acidic.
Yeah.
Okay.
6.
Thank you.
Probably 6.9.
Thank you. I do have a degree in this stuff, so I think you should trust me. You dilute the juice. You've raised the pH, and now fermentation can happen. Obviously, you need to dilute the juice to a certain extent, right? There's the pH threshold. Low enough pH, it stops the fermentation reaction. The enzymes can't do what they do. It's denatured. But if you dilute your juice sufficiently, you get to that pH. Obviously, it depends on the pH of the particular juice. And as you know from drinking apple juice in your youth, not all apple juices, for example, have the same acidity. It depends on the batch. Same thing with wines and grape juices. So Chazal said, don't mix your fruit juice with water. Otherwise, you're going to get fermentation. Presumably, same thing happens with eggs. If you dilute your eggs enough, if you just mix up flour and eggs, you're not going to get chametz. But if you do it with some water in there, you will. Same thing with oil. A lot of our regular pizza doughs, for example, use olive oil. There's mostly water in there. That's why they rise, right? So there's a threshold. Chazal didn't have a way to determine this. I don't think anybody can sufficiently determine such a thing. How much water in the mix when it actually starts to create a chametzing, a leavening process. So Chazal said that, now you understand the way the Rambam has it. Okay? Technically speaking, if I were to take freshly squeezed grape juice and an equal volume of water and use that to knead our matzahs, even though we're continuously working the dough, we shouldn't have a problem, right? Because they're still working it. Yes, but people are machmir for that. So they say don't mix your matzah shira with water. There are other opinions regarding understanding the sugyas. Rashi was famously more machmir for egg matzah, and I don't know why, but that translated as all matzah shiras. The Rambam has an interesting opinion about this use of matzah shira. The Rambam basically says, unlike everybody else says, if it ain't water, if it's juices and oils and eggs, you have matzah shira. The Rambam says not necessarily. You don't have chametzing capabilities, but it's only considered ashira if you use really rich stuff. Okay, olive oil and milk and honey and things like that. The exact thing you can see in the Rambam there. There are many, what some would consider, let's say Strites matzahs made with apple juice and eggs. The Rambam wouldn't consider that matzah shira. L'may nafkamina, that you could use it at your seder. It's still considered poor lechem oni. Everybody else considers that rich also. That's the nafkamina. So here's what happened with the papashado cookies. One, I married into a family that's certainly not Ashkenazic, but they lived in Brooklyn. Like real, Brooklyn. So when I was first married, I thought, I'm going to go to these Sephardim for Passover. They're going to eat rice at their seder, and they're going to have matzah shira to eat, because the kashrus organizations take Rashi's opinion to the extreme. Ashkenazim don't eat, or at least the kashrus organizations tell you, we don't eat matzah shira. which I think is grossly misrepresented, just like the whole Kitnius minhag. If you would hear the Ramah and the Chayadim say what they say about Kitnius, the Kashrus organizations are much more machmir, right? So the Matzah Ashirah issue says on, let's say, for example, I don't know if it's still this case with Strites matzahs with apple juice and eggs. They say it's just for old people and kids to eat. Okay, deference to Rashi, who saw, well, you mix eggs into it and it rises. That's just the egg action. It's not chametzing. Some saw you make a nice dough and in the oven it starts to rise. Oh, you give out. I don't get it. We did this as fast as we can. Yet the matzah is still rising in the oven. What did they actually see?
Bubbles of air?
No, well, superheated gases. When you bake something that has water and other things in it, it produces steam. So bread expands, cakes expand in the oven due to steam. And if you put in baking soda, sodium bicarbonate releases carbon dioxide. And that creates bubbling action also. That's not leavening. That's just a buildup of different gases due to heat or other chemical reactions, but not chametzing. But they didn't know that. So they wanted to somehow get rid of even the expansion in the oven. What did that lead to? Roll out the dough as flat as you could and puncture holes in it and bake it at super high temperatures really fast. That's how cracker matzahs were born. To somehow get over this expansion in the oven. Here's how Papa Shado works. The Sephardim, unlike my in-laws, they, back to that story, I get to my in-laws, they have the most disgusting non-gebrucht Passover confectionaries in their house for Passover. Because that's what they have in Brooklyn. I wanted Matzah Ashirah. They bekoshi have gebruchts. So here's how it goes. The Papa Shado Matzah company makes Matzah Ashirah. Papa Shado is, as you can tell, a French name. They're total French Sephardim, like everybody else around here. And they're making Matzah Ashirah. What are they putting in their matzah? Well, they're using regular white matzah flour for machine matzahs, but they're putting in oil and juice and eggs and a lot of sugar.
Okay.
So, look, it's basically animal crackers. Okay, it's a normal recipe. By the way, just like there's pas and pas above kisnin and chametz, for matzah there's matzah and matzah above kisnin. Matzah with sugar and stuff gives matzah shira. Matzah shira is the pas above kisnin of matzah. So Papa Shado's making matzah shira. Now Strites doesn't add sugar. Strites just, or Manischewitz, what are they putting in their matzah shira? Apple juice or grape juice or wine and eggs. Papa Shado wants it sweeter. Papa Shado's adding sugar. Papa Shado's adding oil. Should make matzah shira. In New York, when they're making matzah shira, the Rav Machshir is like, yeah, this is matzah shira. It's not chametz, but because we have this muneg, we're only going to tell people only the sick and the old should use it, right? Or use it for Erev Pesach, like Rabbeinu Tam, not like the Gra. But the Sephardim, they should be eating matzah shira. What happened here in Israel? Apparently, Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu believed that somehow water was getting in the mix at the Papa Shado factory because they clean between cycles and there are droplets of water. Rabbi Avi Grossman said, so what? Okay? When you're worried about water in the mix, it's like we said before, you're worried that too much water in the mix will raise the pH, or whatever it is, dilute the oils in the eggs, and now chametzing will happen. He didn't mean a few drops, because we washed the mixing bowls in the machines, a few drops of water aren't going to make it chametz. But because they don't know the threshold, how much water actually allows the chametzing to happen. So there you go. They're worried. A little drop. No one knows. It's the problem with Papa Shado cookies is basically part of Muntz's fallacy. Muntz's fallacy is another Simpsons reference. The cartoon character Nelson Muntz is asked a question to which he does not know the answer. So he answers rhetorically. It's like the square root of a million. No one will ever know. Okay? Now, why is that funny? Because if you know math, the square root of a million is 1,000. Just to him, he's a moron. He doesn't know math. To him, it's like find the square root of a hyperbolically large number, a million. No one will ever figure that out. Okay? So, too, there's some people who honestly don't know certain things. And they say, well, how can you know? There's a drop of water in this whole batch of, flour with whatever juice they're using and eggs and oil and sugar and preservatives. So, who knows? That's why we're not so afraid of Papa Shado cookies around here.
That's basically like the. This is just what the entire Torah world is based on nowadays, because you could show them clear sources. I've done this a few times. I've showed people, or I've argued clear sources like X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't know. We don't know why things are like this. It's just that's
Everything is Xeris Akasuv, or how could you know?
But if it's based on pH,
Yeah.
eggs are
Eggs.
basic.
Yeah, so
then
eggs, it's a different reason. The reason eggs
No,
are leavening is a different reason.
I'm not saying eggs by themselves. I'm not saying fruit juice by itself.
Yeah.
I'm saying when you mix the two, now you still have the hydration of the juice, and you have a perfectly good pH, possibly.
Yeah, you need water, because now you need water. There's something about it. Maybe we could do an experiment here.
I would love to do an experiment.
So you go home after Passover.
Yeah.
Do the experimentation.
That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah,
about.
that's what you should be thinking. You know, like the
I
Ramban
wanna
did.
know, what is
Chazal
the
already
actual-
did this experiment. Chazal ran this experiment. IBF, take a certain amount of flour that will rise. That's chametzable. And take a non-diluted juice, freshly squeezed juice, because that's what Chazal had. They weren't playing with juices. And mix with eggs. Crack an egg and see what happens. And you'll see that. And do a control. Just water flour.
And you also need to. You probably take pHs. You have pH strips.
The problem is with the dough. Sometimes you need to be able to immerse it in a liquid. Yeah. So what you do is mix your liquids first and find the pH of that liquid.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So you could do this, and I look forward to results. But Chazal were pretty confident that no water in there. The Ram says no water, no chametz. You need water in the mix. So we're not so afraid of this Papa Shalom things, because a lot of the fear is based on an ability of a lack of knowledge of something, and the inability to actually discern, to then go puk v'chazi, like the Ramban used to do. So go figure it out, and hopefully, you have a nicer Passover like this.